Make a Path presents Let's Talk. Let's Talk. The Walking Dead comic character breakdown of Pete Anderson. Now that the show is in the Alexandria storyline, we will see some kind of remix of the Pete Anderson story. In the comic, when the survivors reach the Alexandria safe zone, Rick cleans up quickly and assumes the role of the community constable. Checking in on Carl, Rick will meet Ron, Pete Anderson's son. He has a black eye that the child quickly explains away. Later at night, there is a community house party to welcome the new members. Rick sees Ron, his mother Jessie, and he sees Pete for the first time. He watches him with suspicion in his eyes. A few days go by, and during an early morning patrol, Rick discovers Pete sleeping on the porch. Rick introduces himself and asks Pete if everything is okay. There seems to be some small disagreements. Later, Rick stops by to speak to Jessie, Pete's wife. She is hesitant at first, but starts to tell Rick that Pete has changed, and he's become violent, and sometimes he hits Ron. Rick takes his concerns up to Douglas, who doesn't want Rick to get involved, because Pete is the community surgeon. They argue, and Rick storms off. Rick goes to the Anderson home. He pounds on the door, and when Pete opens it, Rick attacks. The two men fight and go through the living room window, and then continue the fight outside. Douglas and community members circle the commotion. Douglas tries to stop Rick, but he is a madman. He pulls a gun and puts it right in Douglas's face. Michonne has to crack Rick over the head with a rock just to put him down and disarm him. The two men will get patched up, and Douglas returns Rick's weapon. Pete has been moved out of his house, and Jessie and Ron are now safe. A supply runner dies from his injuries received a few days before. Rick and a few community members have a small quiet funeral service behind the building. Pete will interrupt the service looking for Rick. He pulls out a knife in a wild rage. Regina, Douglas's wife, yells at him. Pete swings wildly, cutting Regina's throat. Douglas doesn't even have time to yell for the doctor. Regina is dead in his arms. Rick's gun is now trained on Pete. Douglas gives him the okay. Rick doesn't say anything. He just executes Pete. The gunshot is heard by a small group of very bad people who are now close to the gates, and they don't want to join Alexandria. They want to conquer it. Subscribe now.